What's up guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Eriny Jacobs, if you don't know that. Anyways, in today's video, I'm gonna try my best to educate you on the Black Lives Matter situation because this has been going on for centuries and centuries and people are just not talking about it and people are sometimes not educated about it. So this video, I'm here to educate you a little bit about it because if I started talking about this subject, I would go for ages. But I'm trying my best to give you one of the most important key situations that happen throughout the history. And just so you're not confused or so you don't get confused, I'm gonna go from like an old date to a future date to an old date to a future date. So I'm gonna be going back and forth between dates. So make sure you focus on the dates so you don't get confused. Also, moments of this video are gonna feel like I'm telling you a story. So just go on with me, okay? I'm trying my best to make you understand the whole racism crap that's happening around the world right now. Anyways, let's get started. In 1981, in South Africa, lived Mr. Ian Whiteley and his wife, Sharon. Mr. Whiteley was a former merchant seaman who happened to be white. His wife, on the other hand, was brown from an Indian descent. But you guys should have listened carefully because when I tell you 1981 in South Africa, that means that Mr. Whiteley and his wife being together and being married to each other, they are violating 3 laws of South Africa back at the time. My dear viewer, you need to understand that this is not the South Africa that was ruled by Nelson Mandela, who served as president from 1994 to 1999. This was the South Africa that was ruled by the apartheid. And if you don't know what the word apartheid means, it means the system of racial separation that was stipulated by law since 1948. Anyways, let's go back to Mr. Whiteley and his wife. These two ran away together in the 70s to a country called Botswana, and they got married there. And then they went to live in the Norway. But as time went by, they couldn't stop thinking about their homeland, about South Africa. So in 1981, Mr. Whiteley gathered his courage and sent a letter to the Prime Minister of South Africa back then, asking him to change his racial classification, to go from white to non-white, despite his physical appearance. And not only that, he also wanted to change his name. I mean, the guy is literally called Whiteley. Can you imagine the amount of stress that this guy must have been in, or the amount of boldness that got him into sending a letter like that? My dear viewer, can you imagine Mr. Whiteley wanted to change his classification so that they would let him go back to South Africa and live peacefully with his brown wife? And that was the situation in South Africa till the early 90s. A country based on racial separation. When you think about it, the idea of racism is very terrifying. People being treated based on the color of their skin, the color that they never chose. In his book, Key Concepts in Post-Colonial Studies, Bill Ashcroft said that the idea of race is linked to the beginning of the expansion or the expansionist tendency of the Western countries. Okay, we got it, Bill. You mean colonialism. If you don't know what that means, colonialism is the policy of a country or a group of countries seeking to extend or to retain its authorities over other people or territories, generally in the aim of economic dominance. In the process of colonization, colonizers may impose their religion, economics, or other cultural practices on the undiagnosed people. So why did the Western countries need colonization? Because the Western powers needed, in one way or another, to impose moral dominance. But how are they gonna do that? By this thing called binarism. Which in this video, binarism means I am civilized and you're a primitive, and I am here to occupy and to invade your country so that I can educate you and make you a human being. It's a difficult task for me, but it's a white man's burden. But it seemed that by time going by, there was this pressure that was under the Western countries to modernize the hierarchical structure, also known as the racial hierarchy pyramid. And on top of that pyramid structure is obviously the white man. In late of the 17th century, Europeans started to classify humans based on their physical differences. In 1648, Franz Boas was a traveler, physician, and a gasendist philosopher. He imposed the existence of differentiated classes based on two things: their facial features and the color of their skin. So by time passing by again, and by the control of biology science, the definition of racial classification started to settle down, and it started to become a normal thing that people identify other people with, and the distinct group is biologically defined. It's like when you're in this situation when you're asking yourself, what are these people called? And what are these people called? That is all defined by science. So based on that, existed the finest and the lowest races. In 1805, Georges Cuvier, a French naturalist and zoologist, he believed that there were three distinct races. The Caucasians, which we call white, the Mongolians, which we call, or he called yellow. I don't know why he chose the color yellow, he seemed like a racist anyway, so let's just move on. The Ethiopian, which we call black. So he rated each based on the beauty or the ugliness of their skull and the quality of their civilization. So he wrote about the white race, and he said that the white race with oval face, straight hair and nose, which the civilized people of Europe belong to, and which appear to us as the most beautiful of all, and also superior to others by its genius, courage, and activity. He also wrote about black people, saying that the Negro race is marked by black complexion, crisp or woolly hair, compressed cranium, and a flat nose. The projection of the lower parts of the face and the thick lips evidently approximate it to the gorilla tribe. The hordes of which it consists have always remained the most complete state of barbarism. Just disrespectful, man. He also thought that Adam and Eve were Caucasians, which is the white race, and that's the original race of mankind. And that the other two races rose by survivors escaping in different directions after a major catastrophe that hit the earth 5,000 years ago. He theorized that the survivors lived in complete isolation from each other and that they developed separately. But you know what? This is the best part of Georges Cuvier's racism crap against black people. One of his pupils, or students, because people don't really use the word pupils anymore. I don't know why. Anyways, one of his students, he was called Frederick. He argued based on the craniometric and brain measurements that was taken by him from Europeans and black people from different parts of the world. Because there was this common European belief that black people have smaller brains and that they are less intelligent. These accusations have no scientific proofs howsoever, and that they're just coming from prejudiced travelers and explorers. People like Charles Hamilton Smith published his book, The Natural History of Human Species, in 1848. And in this book, he mentioned the idea of the three distinct human races that we have just talked about. Someone like Robert Knox published The Race of Man in 1850. And in 1754, someone like David Hume, the very famous philosopher and historian, published his book, National Characters. He said that he tends to think that all black people generally, and all types of humans naturally, are inferior to whites. He said that only white people are the ones with civilizations, arts, and science. In 1853 was published the most popular and the most effective book of all on racial classification. The book that was liked by Richard Wagner, Hitler, Friedrich Nietzsche. I hope I said his name right. Anyway, that book was an essay called The Inequality of Human Races by Arthur de Gobineau. He thought that white people are the finest and that they are more beautiful than black or Asian people. But that wasn't enough for him. He divided every race and made subdivisions inside every race. If you think you're just white, you're not. You're white and you have other features in your body. So there's a person who is white and there's a person who is whiter than the white person. There are degrees of white Arthur said that the Aryan race is the best and the finest race of all. And he obviously classified himself as an Aryan because why the hell not? He thought that the Aryan race or German people are the best of people. And as long as they don't engage with other races physically, then they will stay the best and the most beautiful race of all. But if they did, then the fall of the Aryan race will start. And the level of creativity and moral and power will decrease and fall. And they will never be the most beautiful race ever again. And even after England stopped slave trading in 1833, there were still intellectuals and philosophers trying to justify slavery. Scottish essayist Thomas Carlyle wrote his essay, Occasional Discourse on the Negro Question, about the acceptability of using black slaves and indentured servants. It was published in 1849. Thomas Carlyle saw no problem at all in forcing black slaves to work in the colonial farms. And the famous poet Rudyard Kipling wrote his poem, The White Man's Burden, and wrote about the mission to enlighten the barbaric people. And even Mark Twain, the writer and the great humorist that wrote the very famous novel, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, he wrote in a context in December 1867 that he stood beside the Minister of War and told him to gather all the Indians in a suitable place and slaughter them, because there is nothing that can convince an Indian other than a massacre. And if you don't agree on this plan, then the alternative is soap and education. Because when you wash an Indian and educate him, you will definitely end him and destroy him till he vanishes. Mark, you're so disrespectful. The thing about soap is that it continues till the 20th and the 21st century. In a commercial in 1935, the poster of this magical soap was published, saying that this magical soap will transform you from black to white. The poster literally implies that if you're black, then you are dirty and not clean, and you need to go take a shower to go back to your old self and being white again. And in 2017, Dove made a commercial called True and Real, saying that this soap is gonna change your color just as easily as you change your shirt. Sorry to disappoint you, Dove, but this is not true nor real. And in 2011, Dove had another commercial. I think this one was called Before and After. And some people thought that these companies were making these types of commercials just to make some fuzz about it. Because the more fuzz you make about a commercial, the longer that it will be talked about and the longer it will be lived. In World War II, the United States Army units, they weren't just separating white soldiers from black soldiers, but they were also separating their blood banks. Okay, so long story short, racism in the 18th and the 19th century, it was flourishing, especially in America. And also there was this thing called scientific racism. That type of racism was trying to employ the language and some scientific techniques to support the theories that say that some human groups are inferior to others, just so that it can divide humans to the finest and lowest classes based on their physical, social, and cultural status. But thankfully, that crab was attacked by some scientists and some important figures at the time, like Franz Boas, who published his book, The Mind of the Primitive Man, in 1911. He said that there was absolutely no connection between race, the culture, and the language, and that there is no difference between the ones that we call primitive and the one that we call civilized, and that there is actually no pure race or pure blood. But the question now is, did the solid intellectual and scientific criticism that revealed that the idea of racism is fake and could have terrible consequences stop the killing? Did it stop the killing? The answer is unfortunately no. But maybe the worst thing that happened was the alliance between racism, modern medicine, and the nation state. And in the early 20th century, the physician and biologist Alfred Bloytz created the term racial hygiene that was part of eugenics. He said that comparing the intelligence of a white person to the intelligence of a black person is like comparing the intelligence of a black person and the intelligence of the gorilla. This is like the third time I say this in this video, but this is so disrespectful. The motivation behind Alfred's desire to protect the Aryan race is his fear leader of the reproduction of the weak and degenerated race, or as he thought was the weak and degenerated race. So the Nazis, being the Nazis, started compulsory sterilization or forced sterilization policy on patients of mental disorders and alcoholics. And then they started the policy of mercy killing on toddlers and on people that were disabled. They thought of them as souls that don't deserve to live. They called them burdensome lives and useless eaters. My dear viewer, you need to understand that all of the things that we have discussed in this video, they're all justifications. Racism is a justification to kill people and to take over. Racism is just like Christopher Columbus in the 15th century when he created the term cannibalism to justify killing American Indians. Fanatic minds always need someone to attack. Racial classification is just a lie and a delusion. But what's terrifying about it is that it leads to the contempt and the disrespect of other people. It considers them and their culture a source of physical and moral pollution, even if they're as peaceful as a fly. All I want to say in this video, and all I've been saying in this video, is that Black lives matter. Black lives are in danger. They get killed because of racism every single day. They never chose to be black, just like you never chose to be white. We should celebrate our differences, not make it a reason to justify murder. My advice for everyone out there is to educate yourself. Don't let anybody corner you and tell you, hey, you don't understand crap. And if you have a friend that is black, be there for them, support them, and be their friend. We already live in a pandemic and the world has lost a lot already. Don't let it lose more. Don't let people die for something as stupid as racism. Stop being hateful and stay safe. And lastly and most importantly, be kind. This was today's video. I hope you guys got at one single new information. All I want to do is just help you and make you help the people around you. And I hope that I did that in this video. I'm gonna see you guys next time.